What's good, friends? Welcome back to another video. As you can see, we're in an outdoor setup this time around, and for good reason. Today the weather has finally gotten a little bit more cloudy, and just to give you an idea, I'm currently in Vietnam and it is very close to summer at the moment, which means the weather is blazing hot. Like, coming from Malaysia, even I feel like it's super hot here. And like, I purposely, bought a whole table and, monitors and everything because, one of my favorite things that I enjoy in life is a daytime cigar, right? Cigar while working is, yeah, it's kind of unbeatable. Tough to beat, at least. So today is a rare day where I get to sit outside, so I'm gonna enjoy every moment of this. And speaking about enjoying the moment, it's time to give you guys the update for Bitcoin. So yesterday we already, played this out. We talk about how price, if it returns into this order block right here, take it up, and boom. Now, one thing that is, like, I feel like I should address, not necessarily because we had some negative comments or whatever. It's just, in general, there are two things you need to understand about these calls that I'm making on YouTube. First of which is, if there is a moment where you get to take a trade, for example, an entry here, stop loss here, you target 2R, right? Essentially 2R would be at the previous high. In general, like, if I do not talk about a target, assume that all of my trades are always 2R, and in that sense, it played out. Now, second thing to understand is that the move that I'm usually calling is, I usually record these videos around, like, at the end or like in the middle of the London kill zone, which means between 3 to 5 a.m. New York. The move that I'm usually calling is for New York morning, and that means the move should happen sometime between 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. New York, and by, like, once you get the entry within that time frame, it should play out by the end of the day. And I am not in the business of calling everything, in the sense of, okay, this is what's going to happen in New York morning, this is what's going to happen in New York afternoon. Unfortunately, being someone, like, being in Asia and living in Asia at the moment, thinking about a Europe trip soon, planning that out actually. If you guys have any recommendations on where best to go to Europe in July, August and September, let me know. Currently, we are heavily considering Lisbon in Portugal. I've never been to Portugal. And then maybe Barcelona in Spain. I've also never been to Barcelona, but I've heard great things about a place where you can spend a couple months there and to, just digital nomad a bit. It's kind of what I do nowadays. Yeah, back to what I was talking about before. Being in Asia, like, I don't have the luxury of trading the New York session, or rather the New York PM session, because it's quite literally midnight where I'm staying. So that's why I usually don't talk about the New York PM. But just to give you guys a lesson so that this is not just rant, usually the day plays out with Asia being accumulation, right? We've talked about this numerous times on this channel, and it is one of our bread and butter setups. It's exactly the setup that we used to determine yesterday how we would take out this high with pretty high probability. Asia tends to be accumulation, London tends to be manipulation, and then New York tends to be distribution. Either that, or Asia tends to be accumulation, London breaks out, and then New York continuation, right? It's either an ABC or an AMD. Now, the New York afternoon session is very interesting because most of the time, the New York afternoon tends to only be one of two, scenarios. Actually, three. On a non-news day, you could just chop around, right? A lot of the volatility tends to die out after the New York AM session, especially for a lot of crypto. Well, crypto is still okay, but for Forex pairs, especially like, Euro USD, anything outside of like indices and like the futures, a lot of the volume tends to die down by the New York afternoon. So the first scenario is that you start chopping around. Secondly, is that you will continue to move. This is kind of a rare profile in the sense that you'll continue to move off New York morning. This happens usually on a news day, especially on a late news day, meaning if the news tends to drop on the afternoon or like late morning, around 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., that is when you start getting this. And then you have the third setup, which is the most common, which is a reversal. This is the most common out of all three, New York PM sessions. So just use your wits about you, see how the market structure is kind of, playing out, see how the order flow is kind of playing out, and that should guide your decision on how to approach the New York PM session. So this has been a little bit of an extended intro so far. So now let's get into the video after talking about the fact that we are now 59 out of 72 on public calls on YouTube so far over the last 3 months. Now that that's out of the way, daily chart, we closed bullish yesterday, which means we closed bullish yesterday. And so today our daily bias is bullish. What's also beautiful is the fact that we have remember that fair video that I drew out yesterday? We filled it yesterday, this morning during the Asia session. So that's amazing. That's really good to see. And on the 1 hourly chart right now, we also have a change in state of delivery, which means that now order flow has shifted into bullish, which means it's also the reason why I waited until this candle closed before I made this video, so that I could just give you guys a much more clearer, kind of input. At the moment, direction is pointing towards the upside. So our job becomes much simpler. All we need to do is look for an area of interest. In this case, it will be this favoritic gap right here. If you retrace back into this favoritic gap, that will be like grounds to continuate to the upside. Before I start moving into the lower time frame, I do want to talk about the weekly real quick, because this will kind of shape how, for example, a lot of people would have gotten confused by this move yesterday, right? Oh, it's a bearish market structure change, it's a whatever. But if you remember from yesterday's video, because we talked about the weekly chart, because we started things off on the weekly chart, we were talking about how if you get the weekly open, and the weekly open's here, any point you go below the weekly open will give you an opportunity to buy low so that you can sell high during the weekly expansion. How do we know for certain that, well, we don't know for certain, but how do we know, how can we anticipate that a weekly chart is going to the upside? It's because last week's candle closed bullish. 80% of the time, you tend to want to continuate. Even if you don't go all the way up to a new all-time high, even just previous weekly high is going to be a very solid target, because that's the situation on the weekly chart, which is why this is not a surprise. Given the fact that the weekly opened here, this dip into this favoritic gap is completely like just textbook retrace, trick everyone into thinking it's bearish, and then boom, you continuate the other way, right? This is the true move, because all of the timeframes are pointing towards bullish, right? This is how I approach understanding the higher timeframe bias. And in this case, higher timeframe bias is towards the upside. Lower timeframe is also pointing towards the upside right now. And so we have an opportunity to look for a retrace. Same thing here, right? And now let's zoom into the 5-minute to see if we can further narrow this down. To start things off, we can see that we are currently at the Asia highs. If today has any chance of being a bullish continuation day, Asia is going to become accumulation, London breakout, New York continuation. So that's what we want to see. So at the moment, the setup is still very simple. You want to wait for price to retrace into this favoritic gap, and ultimately during the New York morning session, you will take a trade towards the upside. Target for today is going to be the previous daily high, which is right here at 110.400. Notice I am not targeting all the way at the previous weekly high. This is an intraday trade, and whatever targets we have should be in terms of an intraday. Now, if you are a longer term trader, then feel free to just zoom out to the 1 hourly chart and take your profits here. But for now, the trade that I'm calling here is specifically for the 1 hourly chart. Today is also another one of those A+ kind of days where we have favoritic gap filled during the Asia session. London is breaking out right now. We have a clear favoritic gap, as well as in the event that price actually retraces lower, you could also see this. Although I doubt it, given the fact that we are about a couple of hours out from the New York session, this is much more likely to happen. Going to take a look at Forex Factory real quick to see if there's news today, and we do not have news today. So news is going to come tomorrow, which means that we should keep in mind there is another possibility that is likely to happen, which is today can just chop around. Now, if today ends up chopping around, then it is what it is. I cannot really anticipate these market conditions, but I can kind of mention it. We can account for the fact that because we have no news today, it could chop around, but otherwise the setup is pretty clear. Something like this, targeting 2R. So 2R will give you this previous high right here. And if you target slightly higher for a intraday target, that's going to give you a little 4R trade. Now, this is not a cue to just set a limit here and forget about it. Right now, we have relatively equal lows here. So all you want to do is see price sweep into here. You want to see a bullish change in state of delivery, and then boom, retrace your entry here, stop here on the newly formed low, wherever the low may be, right? Price could dip here, price could dip here. I don't know where the low is going to be, right? There's a couple of hours until the New York session. Use your wits about you, and ultimately you just want to see all three timeframes aligned, right? That's the framework that we're using. Daily chart is bullish. Weekly chart is bullish. 1 hourly chart is bullish. So all you want to see is that 5-minute chart, right? Whenever it shifts bullish, after filling in some kind of key level, that is when you should be looking to enter. And once you do enter, take a 2R, take it at the previous daily high, and that should give you a very clean setup for today. Now on Sunday, I actually recorded a video on I went through 20 charts, and I gave you guys the 5 to 6 best trades for the week. So far, a few of those trades are playing out beautifully. You have Jupiter, you have things that are still setting up. What I mean to say is that you're not too late yet to take the ideas that are shared in that video. So if you want, I'm going to link it right here. Feel free to check it out. But otherwise, if you have been struggling with your trading for a period of time now, and you would like to work with me one-on-one, yes, me and you one-on-one, to get you from where you are at now to basically fund it within the next 60 days, then click the first thing in the description box below. But otherwise, check out that weekly outlook video, and I am going to get back to enjoying my cigar in this beautiful weather. Cheers, guys.